And it's Infinite versus Team Sabotage. We're ready to jump right into the first map of this pool. We're off to a great start here. This, of course, is the first round of play for these two teams. Who is going to pull ahead on map number 1? Casters, let's jump right into the action.
Anchors away here as we're diving into the Maw of Souls once again here.
Here we see actually two Windwalkers, just as we saw as well, and I think judging from the matches we've seen before is where are the teams going to use their Bloodlust? Are they going to use it on the first pack? Team Sabotage are using on the very first pack, so does Infinite as well, which is interesting because we've actually seen the teams that ends up saving Bloodlust for the troublesome pack on the boat actually perform better.
It's very interesting as you mentioned that, you know, when you're having this very kind of awkward situation with Maw of Souls where you're barely able to get 2 Bloodlusts off, or you're able to have just this perfect optimal timing there. I mean, Team PogChamp just really blew us away when we were sitting in the back room, you know, using their Bloodlust there as they pulled all the trash at the top of the boat, plus Skjall. It made such a large difference for them being able to get through the instance so much faster. And it is interesting to see, you know, when they're lusting this early on, they kind of are at that point where they're hard committing to saying, we're going to have to use this Bloodlust at the very end, and we're going to try to see if we can one-phase it, if we can get the timings right.
Which is good if the run itself is relatively slow, but when they go up at this speed as we are seeing in the EU Maw of Souls, it's just too fast to really utilize that last Bloodlust, and right now, definitely Infinite are pulling ahead with the boss quite a little bit ahead, but they've done exactly the same amount of trash pulls and everything, so it's going to be the boat that really decides where these teams go. Yeah,
and we've really seen so many times throughout, you know, different Maw of Souls runs, so many of the deaths, some of the early deaths are going to be coming from, you know, the bottom of the boat, where it's so easy to just lose extra people there. I mean, you know, Yimaron is about to go down for Team Sabotage here, as Team Infinite is having, you know, again, their larger pulls that they have to be dealing with. And we keep seeing this, you know, those tightly enclosed areas, the 6-pound barrels going out. You're seeing, of course, the Defiant Strike taking down Wolf Disco there. Those are the big things that just keep making so many issues for the teams going down here.
Yeah, and then you see teams do a little bit different later on as well. Some teams actually manage to kill the Mariner before they go upstairs and skip that big mob in the underbelly of the ship, and some people just skipping them basically, right? And then we actually did we have a kill on one of the Windwalkers again for Team Sabotage, just not staying alive.
Yeah, it's always important, you know, to be watching a lot of times when we're seeing these Windwalkers, the huge damage that they're able to do, but also on, you know, the level of the survivability that they, you know, may be lacking. So one of the hugest things here is just, you know, that personal, you know, awareness of what's going to be going on all around them. You know, having an idea of, you know, where the barrels are going to be going, watching positioning. I mean, we've seen, for example, Too Fast, the Warlock out of Team Sabotage, was always standing at range when those extra hounds were being pulled onto the ship, making sure all those hounds are going to be going into him, jumping on him. He stands further out at range because, again, he wants to be that furthest target away, making sure that he's able every single time to be able to bait out those jumps. So a great move right there.
And here we're seeing Team Sabotage going with the DK, just pulling everything, pulling off the side. It's going to die there, do that sacrifice run. Meanwhile, Infinite have the Rogue instead, so they're going to try to skip something as well. They might even skip the 2 champions up top after this big guy as well. As they are running past him, they don't need to do that sacrifice there. Team Sabotage getting the DK back up, but now being at the exact same amount of percentage as well, so they're gonna deal with this. And we've seen in the past that teams take these up to the boss. I wouldn't expect anything else from these teams as well.
It's very interesting to see, as you're mentioning, you know, Team Sabotage there was opting to have, you know, the tank pull everything off to the side, and it was actually really lucky that he was able to get as far up onto the stairs that he was. He was able to drop that failure detection pylon, get the instant res, because we saw so many teams just taking so much time when you have to be casting the mass res. While it does have that great range for you, you know, it just eats up so much time that in a Maw of Souls you really can't afford.
Not to mention there's quaking as well, and we've seen unfortunate timings on reses as well, and some
and experienced many of them myself.
Trying to get the heal off and then realize, oh shit, it's quaking, and then you go in there and you drop that pylon in the end as well, and you're just wasting time. So DK being able to do that himself, it's much better.
The world of difference. As we're seeing going into Harbor on here, you know, again, very heavy melee compositions that we have to be focusing on here. You know, tight and closed areas. You're saying Harbron is going to be spawning periodically that Servant. Servant will be having that AoE nuke cast that needs to be interrupted every single time. You're also going to be having the Fragment. You're seeing the Fragment there just about to go out on Kazni. Everybody need to be getting on top of those ads. It will stun the target and just be a constant taking damage. So, you know, getting everything in and also making sure you're able to have it underneath the boss to maximize your cleave potential makes things a lot easier, especially when they still have those champions that they're just now finishing off for Team Infinite.
Yeah, it's a bit of a DPS loss for both of them, having to deal with them and make sure that they're coordinated as well, interrupting those two, as well as the boss spawns here as well that we're getting a very good close-up of as well. But they have 2 Windwalkers, a very good. You have that leg sweep as well to be able to stun. Make sure they get that every stun. I think the fragment is spawned on 45 seconds, just as the leg sweep is 45. So if you start doing that as early as possible, you're gonna start falling a little bit behind. You have 2 here, just making sure that they don't get anywhere. You can area them.
Yep, and one of the interesting things you're seeing for Team Sabotage, the kind of awkward positioning that they're in, because the Servant, like we were talking about, is going to be spawning on one of your players, and a lot of times on your ranged players. You want to make sure you're standing where your team wants to end up going later on. That way, you know, everyone's going to jump onto that Servant there, and they're going to be able to interrupt. And as you're seeing for Team Sabotage, that poor positioning when it was just stuck in this big void zone area, 2 casts going off, all the DPS is dead for Team Sabotage here. You know, they're at 2% left on the boss. Everyone will be able to res, but this might really set them behind when they're trying to do their large deck pull.
Yeah, luckily DK don't have to actually solo the full thing, even though we might almost have the healer going down
so
very close there as well. But that's 3 depths for them as well, and they're already behind. They do end up killing the boss a little bit before them, but here we're going to see the big pull on the bridge. They're going to go there, and they obviously don't have the bloodlust here, so hopefully they don't trickle down and start going to have to kite and lose people. We'll see how perfect this pull is.
Well, it's the scary part is, you know, they're losing their food buff, you know, they have to re-up on their augment runes, you know, from those deaths. So it's very important. And again, that internal timer kind of goes off in the tank's head as you're seeing Tack just start slowly trying to kite back, making sure he's kind of getting all these mobs in together. Some of them he will be able to kite, to others he will not, because they'll be immune to some of the slows. But it's very, very important. Just kind of watch the positioning. As you are seeing the tank going down, he just wasn't able to sustain it, and he had already used his Purgatory as he was running up to deal with Harboron. So they're just trying to get everything back together here.
Yeah, this is a very rough part. They would probably have been done better if they had Bloodlust at this point, because once all the cooldowns start going off and they're gonna start kiting them, they don't have that proper CC, they don't have the proper interrupts, and so many things can start going wrong at that point instead of just having that a little bit earlier. The healer for Infinite going down as well, but they've done this pull so much better. Even if it's not perfect for either of the teams, Team Sabotage definitely losing a lot more steam on this.
Yeah, and did 14 deaths as they're just trying to maintain this pull. They didn't have a full wipe, but in some ways it does really set them back even further when they're having just so many extra deaths being added to this timer, where you're having, you know, Infinite 2 deaths with Team Sabotage and 14. It's just such a huge differential.
And those hazards are still healing. You see them all spread out. They don't have really much control of them at all, and now they're just gonna have to deal with them a little bit more. I don't know, it might be easier to just even completely wipe and reset this. The DK actually like almost dying here. Purgatory was procced at that time, so I don't know, are they going to keep throwing bodies at that?
They seem to be, and that's one of the scary things is this is the exact same composition that they use for much of their time trials for Team Sabotage. So ideally, this should be their comfort pick. You know, it was almost a month ago when we had those time trials, and when you're having the very first dungeon that's going to be coming out, and, you know, I was really expecting to see something a lot more similar to Revolution, where, you know, they're just trying like crazy to make sure they perfect their Maw of Souls. And with this format, it's ridiculously important to make sure you're getting this first game as a win.
Yeah, and Maw of Souls, something we'd seen a lot. We saw it in time trials. These teams should be very, very comfortable with that. You said maybe Team Sabotage just went. I'm not sure if they ran 2 rogues during the Maw of Souls as well, but a lot of the Maw of Soul runs wasn't like it's not in this setting. It might not be the exact same affixes, and some small things like that might just throw you off a little bit. And that one pull wasn't perfect for Team Sabotage. Infinite now actually full screening the whole the Hylia fight.
The full Hylia fight getting full screen on display here. They do need to make sure they're taking care of the different kinds of tentacles. They have the Destructor Tentacle, which needs to be tanked every single time, going down first, and they're able to get some really good cleave damage out onto the Graspings at the same time. Again, kind of hugging the edges, and you're seeing, you know, Conexa, for example, rushing across the side of the boat after that tentacle spawn, so otherwise they're always kind of staying to the edges of the ship there, making sure they're able to still cleave onto the Grasping Tentacles as they're coming out, while focusing down the Destructor. And then they're making sure, you know, every single time they have to be moving across here, because Hylia will periodically just swipe one side of the group with just a big splash from the water. Kind of splash, a little play around, but it will just one-shot you, so making sure they're kind of keeping an eye on that, knowing which side of the boat that they need to position themselves at.
Yeah, that one tentacle down from actually going up 1v1 against this half god or whatever you would call it, because
it's fallen angel.
Fallen angel, indeed. And we've never been able to see any of the teams one-phase this. And now we're having a team that's a little bit later behind, and they're actually gonna have Bloodlust very soon after that phase starts. So they might actually go for it and just try to do it once, and I'd love to see that.
Yeah, and one of the kind of most awkward things we keep on seeing with these Maw of Souls runs is teams are in this situation where they have about 20-25 seconds before it comes back, and before they're able to get Bloodlust back, before they're able to you know, have the huge boost to their damage to be able to try to get that. So they should be able to have a full duration of Lust before the Submerge goes down. But I think in a lot of ways it really makes things a lot easier for the teams when they are at full resources, when they're, you know, kind of capped out, they're all prepared from what they were already taking down all the tentacles and stuff like that, and then instantly able to hit Bloodlust. So they're opting, you know, just to kind of wait here because they do have, I believe, one more breath before, maybe two more breaths before there actually ends up being the Submerge. So they're kind of just taking it easy, taking it safe, making sure they're going to get the Bloodlust a little later.
Yeah, they're not going to one-phase it unless they would have saved all the cooldowns and everything. They do end up using it in the end because it's not really going to make much difference. Are you going to use it now with the last 20 seconds before she goes away, or after she comes up, the last 20 seconds there? You're not going to get full value of it anyway, so you might as well use it, try to get it as slow as possible.
It's kind of weird having, you know, that 5 or 10 second gap between them just not using it at all, because they're wasting, again, you know, a good 20-second duration or so of Bloodlust, or maybe 15-second duration. So they definitely had a window there where they would only have a couple seconds left over, kind of a couple seconds bleeding over that they would be wasting on Helly, and maybe they could have gotten that one phase out because she's only at 73% now. So it's kind of a weird waste there by Team Infinite.
Yeah, I think it might have been a little bit miscommunication. Should they use it right away or not? And I mean, right now they're in the lead by quite a bit, so maybe it didn't really matter too much about the trying to fine-tune that.
Yep, a strong performance here by Team Infinite, getting Helia down, getting to that 70% mark, taking her down. So overall, not the cleanest Maw of Souls run that we've seen, but pretty strong performance here by Team Infinite.
Lads, you know, I'm going to say one thing right now. It never feels good to get full screened. It definitely doesn't feel good to get full screened on Maw of Souls. So Team Sabotage going to need to come up with a big pick here as they go into the second map. That will be their advantage. They will be able to actually pick a map catered to what they have done, what they have practiced, what their composition is actually good for. But Infinite, I mean, one of the only things that we were really kind of critiquing them for was maybe that heroism at the end. But overall, that was a pretty good Maw performance from them, Jack.
Yeah, and let me tell you, it's Bloodlust. It's not heroism. Thank you very much. But yeah, I mean, overall, it was a lot cleaner, and you know, their efforts to really save as much time as possible really was paying off for them, as we were talking about there. You know, being able to get the extra skip around a lot of the little sludge belchers, you know, downstairs of the ship. They were playing very cleanly, for example, and you know, dealing with the quaking as they were at the bottom of the floor, dealing with the 6-pound barrels, all those kind of things. And that's what you really want to see, is when you're having the time trials, and we kind of just harped on it a lot here. The focus on making sure you're having clean execution in a dungeon like this just sets the pace for the rest of the series.
I completely stopped listening to you the second you said that.
Sorry, well, it's Bloodlust. Sorry, man.
Maw of Souls is pretty interesting because, as we've seen these teams do them many times, and then if you do them 10, 15 times a day, and then you end up... You mess up one pool, and you just... let's just do it again. Here, there's no rematches, or there's technically a lower bracket, but that's going to cost you a lot to not be able to do that one big pull, and just running out of steam. Like, cooldowns just went out, and they just started healing, and yeah.
Well, Team Sabotage is going to need to come up with something. We're going to run to a quick break, but when we return, what are they going to do? What map are they going to lock in? They need to pull out all of the stops when we get back. Why? Our backs are against the wall. Listen, all y'all, it's a Sabotage. When we return, what do they have in store? What map will they pick? We find out after this. folks, welcome back. Infinite going to be leading by 1 here. Sabotage has fallen slightly behind, which means it is their map pick. My name is Rich. I'm going to be your host, and I am joined on the desk by Automatic Jack and Shrekky. And guys, the thing is the pick coming in right now is kind of Sabotage's best weapon against this squad, and we have already heard that they have selected Nell's Lair. What do you think of this pick, Shrekky?
It's going to be a comfort pick. It's one of the dungeons we've seen the most outside of maybe Maw of Souls and Darker Thicket, but it's a comfort pick. A lot of teams are very comfortable with this dungeon and just run it all the time, I guess.
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorite dungeons to run, and you know, Jack, we've gotten to run this one quite a few times together.
That's right.
You've seen some next level strats come out from your boy. You've learned a lot. You know, you're ready to go and cast this dungeon now that you've played it with me quite a few times. Almost, maybe not. I'll be right here next to you the whole time.
Appreciate it.
I'll try to stay quiet for you.
Thank you.
What do you think of this pick, though? I mean, we got to be completely honest. Team Sabotage, they kind of dropped the marbles on that last one.
They did. Yeah. And one of the things that always kind of stands out to me is when these teams have, you know, opportunities for picking, you know, a dungeon that's going to be having a lot of extra strategies to it, or it's going to be having something that's going to be just raw execution, how much these teams are really going to be practicing on it. And Nels is kind of in an in-between. There's not too many big differences that we've really seen in terms of execution. I think the most wild thing we've seen is like Free Marcy stopping both of the Scorpions before Dark Rule at the very, very end, which is an incredibly risky but incredibly powerful strategy that they employed. So short of Team Sabotage having something like that, I think they're just saying, you know, this is our comfort pick. This is something that we've practiced on so much, and we know that we can succeed on.
All right, well, we're going to find out very soon. Are they just playing it safe, or are they going to get wild in Nell's Lair? First things first, though, we got to plunge down to our fate. Map number 2, time for the water slide. Boys, let's get wet.
Back into my father's ancient lair here, into Neltharians. And are you ready for the water slide, Shrekky?
I'm ready for the water slide.
Alrighty.
Many water parks in all of Europe, and they are probably very seasoned water parkers, I'm sure.
I didn't know water parkers was a term. Now, important to keep in mind that these the classes are locked in for this. So one of the nice things that Team Sabotage will be able to kind of take advantage of is they do already have that Warlock, and that's one thing that you really can't stress enough is you will be able to have, you know, Sacrolash, the slow ring for Warlocks, that they will be able to have, you know, a little bit better of an advantage to be able to get all these mobs grouped up together, get the slow out, make things a lot easier on the tank and on the entire group, especially when both teams are running so melee heavy, to get everything in together and then start slowing it when the tank needs to kite.
Yeah, it's really insane gameplay here. We see how useful some classes are. The DK definitely with the grip, mass grip, getting everything together and like in that way. It's Team Sabotage's pick as well. So they've picked this dungeon because they have 2 Windwalkers.
It's also important to note that the third affix that was chosen was Necrotic. So, you know, the big thing in Team Sabotage's mind, as they just completely obliterate that last trash pack, Infinite still working to get it done. Atari is going down because, again, they don't have that slow. The Necrotic starts stacking up. They're not able to, for example, slow the Hulk even for just a little bit. So that makes it a lot more difficult for their team to be able to kind of get rid of these Necrotic stacks on an easy basis. So one of the nice things, when you can't slow it, you have to engage with these mobs, and it makes it so much harder. And it puts an internal clock on the tank's head where they say, well, after this point, I can't be healed, I can't drop my stacks unless I'm, you know, going to be having AMS up and ready every single time. So it really puts a lot more pressure on them.
Yeah, you're going to have to start running at some point, and Infinite their tank just ran out of steam a little bit too early there. The mobs weren't all dead at that point. And Team Sabotage, it's their pick. They're doing it very comfortably. Infinite still dealing with those last trash before they can actually get to the boss. So strong pick, strong performance from Team Sabotage this time around.
Yep, and as Bloodless is just wrapping up, Team Sabotage has Rockmore down to 50% here. Just fantastic job making sure that they're able to, of course, very important, make sure they get the little skitter ads, you know, kind of keeping them out of melee range. You're seeing the tank always taunting them, moving them up to his position, because when these skitters do die, while they do buff the damage of that smash that you're seeing out of Rockmora, they also do drop little spooge zones, little void zones afterwards that deal quite a bit of damage here. So it's very important to make sure you're kind of getting them on top of the tank. You're trying to stack these up as best as you can to kind of make sure you have as much room as you really want to work with here. And again, we're at the 22 level, so they should be able to kind of nuke it very, very quickly and easily here. But Infinite just working to catch up right now.
Yeah, they're just starting the boss. Team Sabotage doing very cleanly here otherwise. And I think something we're going to see later on as well, that Warlock slow really come into play where Infinite just doesn't have that. They don't completely lack slows, but I think if there's one class that does it the best, it's probably going to be just a Warlock, just making sure that everything's just in position, everything's gripped in, everything stands in one position and slowly walks out.
That's right, and you're seeing Team Sabotage getting Rockmora down. I believe both teams did Bloodlust at just about the exact same time there, but I believe Infinite used theirs on Trash instead, whereas Team Sabotage saved theirs for the boss. So not only did Team Sabotage not use their Bloodlust for the very first Trash pull, they saved it for Rockmora, but they also killed that first Trash pull way quicker than their opponents. So just overall, this is the execution that we've been talking about, is making sure that they know that, like, hey, we're just going to play better than you. We're going to keep on playing more cleanly, and we're going to be able to deal with Necrotic, which, you know, usually teams don't willingly go into, but with them, when they have that preparation ready, just pulling off great results.
Yeah, and here we're gonna see another big pull from Team Sabotage. They're even going for the Hulk as well. All those pelters running their breakers, and this is actually a lot bigger pull than we usually see. We don't see teams take that extra ad pack to the right there, but here we go, Mass Grip. They even use the Warlock portal to just get away, because most of these mobs, everything but the Hulk, really, they don't do anything as if they're close by to the tank.
And I love this Ring of Peace that's going down. You're having one of the Windwalkers running with leg sweep, while the other one with the Ring of Peace there, and it even is keeping the Hulk back. And that's one of the nicest things. You're able to have such a close proximity on the Hulk with the rest of the mobs, because usually the Hulk is not one to be super slowed down and will just immediately start sprinting to the tank. But with how low this Hulk is, it's just about to go down right as they get everything else down. That's a phenomenal execution there by Team Sabotage, and this is what you want out of your counter pick.
Yeah, it's a really big pull. They really know what they want to do with this as well, and they chose an affix like Necrotic. I know when you're pugging these dungeons or doing these casually, then you don't really... like, Necrotic becomes really annoying if you don't know how to do these pulls, but these teams, they chose Necrotic because it really isn't that big a deal. You do these pulls, you do these massive pulls, you AoE grip everything and then stun, and then the tank just walks away, and he doesn't get Necrotic stacks at all, and the few seconds he does, he stacks up instantly, so he can't be healed, but then he just starts walking away, and it's no problem whatsoever.
That's right, and Team Sabotage here getting the other Hulk and the rest of the trash packs in together here. Again, same story that we're seeing last time. You know, I would have liked to see the Hulk maybe a little bit closer, but it is still going to be affected by the Ring of Peace, which is the biggest thing that they want to be looking at here, and it makes it so much easier just to be able to get huge damage on the Hulk early on before it starts getting back to the tank.
But talking about big pulls, with Infinite, they pulled everything downstairs, and they're pulling it up as well, so they have a really big pull here with two of the Hulks as well that they have to deal with. Make sure that they get the stun off so that he doesn't do the frontal on the tank, because that really hurts. So a much bigger pull here, but again, if they just get everything together in a proper manner and then you just slow them, you see here everything is walking away. The Hulk, they're gonna have to deal with it a little bit, but when they're alone, as they will be in a few seconds, it generally won't be that big of an issue, and that really caught up a lot on like trash here for teams on Team Sabotage.
And this is what they really need, right? Is they need to make sure that they're taking these extra risks. They need to make sure that they're getting back into this game, because it can be just a snowball effect when you're racing dungeons together. You know, it can be such a snowball effect where teams get a little bit of a lead and then it continues to compound on top of each other. So, you know, this is where they need to start with. You know, this is going to be the start of what they need to be doing to make sure they're catching up here. They need to get this Hulk down, and of course the last of the Shapers there before they're going to be able to engage with Ularog. As Team Sabotage already engaging with it, already at that 80%, and they did leave, as you're seeing on the left side of Team Sabotage's train, you are seeing they left the Shaper and the Geode actually up. It's really nice because you're able to have too fast there as the Warlock be able to get his Sephu's proc constantly, but just recasting Banish on top of the Geode every single time. So it's a nice little DPS game there for the Warlock.
Yeah, definitely. We saw that the last team as well. The Holy Paladin Repentance, the Shaper, so he can't actually move and engage. They can't even body pull it by walking close. And I believe Banish goes by the same rules, although it's limited to very few with elementals.
It's very few actual types of mobs that can be CC'd, much like with the Paladin, where it's going to be relegated mainly to humanoids and undead, and I believe there's another one. So it's very limited in what you can do, but when you're able to have, like I said, Repentance onto one, Banish onto the other, get those Sephu's procs if Kagu is going to be running with Sephu's, which I would recommend if you're just going to be maxing out your damage here. Very nice haste benefits, and you're able to get it down so much more quickly. And as you're seeing, Team Sabotage coming out of that the first down phase, the first totem phase, they are able to get quite a substantial lead running here.
Yeah, generally you will see these teams do very similar. Sometimes you have some teams do one phase less if it's really close. Depends on the affixes, depends on the key and this level and everything. But That's the big part. If you can skip one of those, you will save so much time.
And you're seeing here, just a little light spread coming out of the melee. That way they're going to be able to dodge any of the stone hands that are going out. Ularog is entering his second totem intermission. Like you said, it's kind of hard to completely dodge them. So you're seeing that totem in the middle. It's going to be moving in just a second here. Important to make sure you're keeping an eye on that one, because that will be the one totem that needs to be killed in order to actually break Ularog out. And at the moment, I believe it's going to be the bottom right one, the far right. Yes. All right, hey, I love this game.
I usually don't even pay attention to it. I just tab out and read Twitch chat or something when that starts on. But it depends on who you are. Just hoping someone deals with it. As long as you're not in a competitive setting like this, it's usually pretty fine if most people, even if you do all of them. But here we see Team Sabotage is going to kill the boss off. They have a lot of time spare here before the next phase comes as well. So I'm assuming Infinite will have the same. They will have the same amount of down phases. And honestly, they will probably kill it right after this one, where they finish the cup game at 23% here as well.
Yep, Team Sabotage did opt to pull that last pelter that was in the back there. He's making sure he's kind of keeping their distance. That way they're able to kind of kill it. That's what you're seeing. You know, the damage meter still going up for Team Sabotage here. As their tank just starts kiting, starts moving ahead. That way he's able to get set up for the next pull here. And usually, like I said, we'll be seeing a lot of the Richardiles here coming up. To be able to make sure we're pulling those, grabbing them into the rest of the mobs here. And they're very, very easy to deal with. So a lot of times, you know, you won't really see your DPSers really hitting these until everything is going to be grouped up together, just because of the fact that it's going to be so much more easy to deal with once everything is up together. And, you know, a lot of times these aren't going to pose too much of a threat.
No, and like that, getting that mass creep, getting that, starting all those stuns at the same time. You also have a Team Sabotage. These again, really big pull here, and as soon as everything gets gripped in, you have a leg sweep. They're stunned for 5 seconds, and then you have another one, follow that up for another 2.5 seconds, and you even have the tank just walking away. That necrotic's not going to do anything. We even have Grievous as well, which isn't really much of a case outside of the bosses. There's a little bit of trash here, but when we're just kiting this trash, Grievous is not a bad affix for this dungeon. But when you're not able to kite those, or if you aren't, your group is taking so much damage, and that Grievous adds on top of that makes it so much harder to deal with as well. And Infinite doing the same pull.
Yep. And you're seeing the Team Sabotage, like you mentioned, you know, when you're able to kite a lot of these pulls, when you're able to deal with that, and we're not in a tyrannical setting, you know, Grievous is a lot easier to deal with. You know, a lot of times if you're having any of the pelters going out, you're trying to top off, you know, the player that has Grievous, and they're getting pelted by all these different mobs. So really, it's only going to be Neuraxis that can be a pain to really deal with here. So important to note, you will have 2 large spits that are coming out from Neuraxis that will just leave those slow puddles there that will then slow these Devouts. Right above where all the players are at this point, there's going to be the nice audience of Devouts to the Neuraxis god who are cheering on our demise. It's very important, you know, to make sure you're getting on top of these Devouts, killing them before they actually end up reaching the boss. If the boss does consume them, it will be a 50% damage increase per mob consumed. And in just a second, you'll see Team Sabotage, you know, Neuraxis will then try to eat the tank, and they'll be using those same slow puddles to be actually getting away from the boss and make sure you're not getting dragged in.
Yeah, I can't really see if we have a Warlock portal. Sometimes you put those up as well, because as we all know, DKs are a very mobile class, and they're not going to have any issues whatsoever to outrun this. But you see him just walking away as far as possible. He needs to use those pools, because otherwise he is going to get eaten up, and you could save it with a bop right before and just make sure that he doesn't take any damage or die. But the boss is still going to get that buff, and you're going to be in a lot of pain for the rest of the fight.
Well, especially because it's going to be, you know, adding a lot more damage to that extra poison that is going to go out into the entire group. Then you have to deal with the Grievous. Then you have to deal with the other spits that are going to be going out. So a lot of it can be that kind of compounding damage there, where it'll be a lot more difficult for the healer to be able to catch up here. So that's why you're seeing, you know, kind of the focus there as a healer. Make sure they're quickly dealing with the damage that does come out from those poisons, getting everybody topped off. Then the Paladin kind of just positions himself so that he'll be able to take on those Devouts and make it so that, you know, the monks, for example, don't have to divert too much time away from the boss in order to kill these.
Yeah, we actually saw in the last series as well with Niltharians there that the healers went completely out of mana as well. And on this fight, because of the poison, as you said as well, there's so much raid damage going on, or group damage going on. So these both Paladins here seem to be very healthy on mana part at least, but now they finished that part, going down to the really dangerous part here. Are they going to do both of the Scorpion packs at the same time right before the boss, or might they even skip it?
Well, at this point, Team Sabotage is at 100% trash percentage, and we saw this at a Free Marcy last week, where they actually ended up trapping and stopping both of the Dominator, both of the Scorpion packs, and this made it so much easier for them to engage with Ularog there, because what they are able to do is they're able to actually shut down both sides of the Scorpions there. They're actually I love what they're doing here. They're gripping it away. They're actually making sure that they're going to be able to get those resets going out there, and it looks like they will have Kagu, for example, just pull those Dominators on the right side before they pull the boss, die, and then get a battle res from Tic Tac there. It's really cool to be able to see this going on, because this makes it so... Actually, he did have a Soul Stone already, so they already had the Soul Stone out. He was already out of range for them, and now they just have to refresh the paralyses on the Dominator and on that Trapper there, and then they're all set. So it's really nice for they making their own room for themselves, you know? Yeah. They didn't have to worry about like pulling it into the pocket, kind of like Free Marcy did. They've made their own room, and it makes it so much easier and so much less lethal for the healer. Yeah, that a mass grip was very important there, where they just paralyzed them, mass grip them away, so they could get a little bit more ground to use on this boss, as this boss actually takes a fair amount of room to maneuver around. He spawns the crystallizes on players though, so you can actually put them in a favorable position for you, but then you have the Molten Giant you have to kite into as well as your tank just getting knocked away generally. You get a small knockout and then knockback, and then you have to use your active negation for the Molten Smash, and if you don't do that, you get another huge knockback as well, and here we see the big AoE that people are hiding from. Yeah, but you have to watch out for the Maga Waves going out, but I love the positioning there at it too fast, making sure the crystals are spawning at a location that's going to be close enough for Used2 and Dala to refresh their paralysis onto the Dominator, onto the Trapper there. It makes it a world easier, because that's one of the most scary positions that you could actually be in. If the paralysis falls off because the group is not positioned close enough for you to actually run out and refresh the CC that you have on it, it makes it so much more difficult. And you're seeing Team Infinite also just trying to be able to deal with Dark Rule in a similar fashion here, but they all are also incurring some extra deaths along the way. Yeah, they did the same kind of thing there, but instead of CCing them, yeah, Dark Rule is going to go down for Team Sabotage very soon here. They are also with less deaths, so if they finish it off here, as they do, they will take the second game again against Infinite.
And now if you're Team Infinite, all you can do is just scream, "Ah, I can't stand it!" I know they planned it, but on the desk right now, we got to set it straight. That Nell's Lair was great, but the thing is they're not going to have that advantage going into map number 3. That is the luxury that Infinite has, pulling down map number 1. When it comes to the map that matters the most, the one that's going to decide it, they are going to have the pick for their map. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Why did this Nell's Trekkie work out so well for Team Sabotage?
Team Sabotage knew exactly what they were doing as well. They chose this one because they probably practiced it a lot, and we saw that this definitely in the difference between the two teams on the very first pull, where Team Sabotage takes everything, grips it all in, and stuns it and kills it before they have time to do anything. While Infinite is trying to do the same, but maybe they're not as brushed up, or something caught them by surprise. They didn't do it super clean. They had 2 deaths there. Cost them a lot of time because they didn't really get them all down, and they had to like kind of kite them until the tank came back and just deal with them.
Well, for Team Sabotage, I mean, it's really first pull all the way to the last too. You even see how they end up doing that last boss. Definitely very well rehearsed on that map, but they knew we can't get so jazzed up about map number 2, because they know that they are going to have to go through Maw, right? That Maw was a little bit bad to say the least. And the question that I have for you right now, Jack, is do you think that was a lack of practice on Maw, or do you think that was just one big slip up that happens, maybe jitters going in on the first map of the day? Are we going to see map number 1 Team Sabotage when we go into map number 3, or do you think we're going to see map number 2 Sabotage?
Well, I think it's definitely going to be map number 2. And I think there's always got to be jitters whenever you're getting into these tournament situations, when, you know, the prize money is increased, when, you know, all the stakes have really increased, and they had such a tough road, like all these teams having such a tough road to actually get into the tournament to begin with, because Europe was so ridiculously competitive, like we were talking about, right? So I think a little bit of it was the jitters, because this is, you know, Maw of Souls was supposed to be that game that everybody practiced, so you can't be having 14 deaths on your opening game. But at this point, if it's going to be a map that they hopefully have a good practice in, they should be able to pull this out. Or they should be able to put up a good fight, I'll say.
I'm really excited for this one. We're all tied up. A great series ahead of us, but we got to jump to a quick break. But right now, listen up, because Infinite, they can't say nothing. They shut you down with a push of the button. But, yo, I'm gone right now, but when we return after this break, we are going to keep it on and on. It is week number 3. It is Europe, a tied series, when we return after this quick break. Infinite versus Sabotage. It's going to be decided right here on this next map, and we called in the big guns to cover this one. The only desk in the MDI with every single person with a full head of hair. Absolutely incredible stuff. My name is Rich, and I am joined by Jack and Shrekky. And guys, we've talked quite a bit about these two teams. Obviously, Sabotage on their map pick looks incredible. They truly do. The first map, they leave a little bit to be lacking. Infinite looking consistent throughout the entirety of this series. Now we do know that map pick, and that map pick bald people off the stage. Please, bald people off the stage. I know you guys can't see it. I'm happy for you, but they were messing up the lighting with those shiny bald things they called heads. But Court of Stars is going to be the final map where this does take place. What do we think of this map selection, Jack?
I love Court of Stars personally as an instance, but I think this is also going to be one of the picks that's going to be a lot more on, you know, like we said, comfort picks in the past. This is also going to be on Tyrannical and Teaming, and I believe Volcanic is going to be their third pick. So in a lot of ways, whenever you're having Volcanic as like their third pick, you're saying, okay, this is going to be one of the easier affixes that we really have to deal with. So saying, hey, I'm just going to play this better than you. I'm going to have the better execution here, and I'm going to be making sure that I'm going to be able to, you know, get way past everybody else in this dungeon.
Trekkie, what do you think of this map selection? Hey, bald folk, I'm serious. Production's telling me right now you're ruining the lights with those aberrations of Trekkie. So what were you saying?
I do love this instance as well. It's probably my favorite instance in all of Legion, and on the MDI here we don't have those random buffs either, so it's going to be very even for these teams, and we're really going to see are those double Windwalkers going to come into play more or not. And I think a very big deciding factor in the last game was that Team Sabotage had that Warlock. They were able to have those slows and all the benefits a Warlock brings. Meanwhile, Infinite, as we saw, they would probably have swapped, but in the new set of series here, you're locked in with the same characters and the same specs. So, or like not the same specs, but we're probably going to see the same specs.
Yeah. But this is, of course, Infinite's map pick. Will it just be to infinity and beyond here, or will we see Team Sabotage make a stand? It's all tied up. This is going to be the one to decide it. Infinite versus Sabotage.
Starting it off here in the Court of Stars. First, we had our water slide. Now we're having our boat ride. I think we might be at a water park here, Trekkie.
Yeah, we have a lot of boats here as well, and it's like I'm kind of interested what team is going to make it first to the docks as well.
Okay. Sorry, I thought you were making like the signal beacon. I'm like, well, I mean, they're pretty close to each other, you know. But yeah, I see what you're saying with we've seen it a number of times with the docks pull that will be coming up there, and a lot of times we've seen teams that are focusing more on killing it just after they actually deal with their guardsman Gordo there, instead of going in early onto it. And especially because it's going to be a tyrannical instance, they want to be able to get to the boss, get their lust on cooldown as rapidly as they possibly can, and then worry about that extra trash pull a little bit later when their healer is going to be resetting.
Yeah, I'm also interested about the very first mob here as well. Are they going to bring it in and make sure that they kill it, like kite it off, or just going to repent as so they can skip it? And I like seeing when teams go down as well to the docks after they come up with meeting the dogs on the first scout there, and they go left instead. But I don't think we saw that this series around at all, but we have seen it in the past.
Yeah, and here, as you're seeing, Team Sabotage is waiting for their Holy Paladin to be able to repentance that. Of course, Can on Team Infinite is able to just get the quick imprison. That way they're able to kind of skip by it. And the guards can be just kind of a pain to deal with there. They just do have a very large amount of HP, and they just can be kind of painful to kind of deal with here. You're seeing Infinite making short work of all these sentries that will just be running up to that signal beacon, trying to turn it on as rapidly as possible. If they do get their cast completed, they summon a reinforcement that doesn't give you any real trash percentage and just has tons and tons of HP. So it's just a huge inconvenience there.
How big would they pull here though? And we're seeing Team Sabotage pulling most of Worms and then pulling it into the other one, avoiding these constructs as they can be a little bit of a pain to deal with. And Infinite just skipping all of it.
Very interesting to see Team Infinite. They're actually skipping past everything possible there and getting right on top of the boss there, grabbing the Mana Worms, grabbing that Mana Saber along with the boss, getting Bloodlust up. They really need to make sure that they're going to be able to get this Saber down very rapidly before it does end up jumping. It does get onto Can. He does need to be dispelled from that magical debuff there. But you're seeing, Taz is actually out of range because he's shutting off all the rest of the beacons there. So very important. hand dropping so low there. Paladin getting, the quick heals off onto him as he does move back into position to be able to heal everybody. Then he steps back out to start turning off more of the signal beacons there. So they still will have to deal with 2 of those adds, but it's very, very cool to see early on out of them just skipping so much early trash and getting right on top of it and getting that Bloodlust off early.
Yeah, like I said, that Bloodlust a little bit earlier, not too much different as Team Sabotage has used as well. They pull the boss with a lot of trash, so they pull the trash first into the boss, so they don't have, might not have the same cooldown uses depending on how they save it up, but they have the boss usually where you generally would be tanking it otherwise. But it's important here to passively kind of turn the boss away so that when he does this hourglass shaped stun area, you don't have that where ranged already are. The ranged and healers, so they don't have to move, as I see that a lot of times otherwise in other groups, that you have everyone have to move, and if you actually just position him correctly, you don't have to deal with it as much, or if at all, as the ranged.
Yep, and you're seeing there, Infinite doing whatever they can to make sure they're having that proper positioning there, be able to kind of avoid those resonant slashes, and then of course being able to watch out for that street sweeper there. It's very important, as you're seeing the lockdown going out for Team Sabotage, that everyone's able to clear those out as quick as possible, either through a Dispel, Hand of Freedom, or of course just jumping enough time to be able to clear all your stacks, because you do still have to be dealing with some of the extra guards that are summoned by Gerdo there periodically if you do not turn off some of those beacons. So it's important to make sure you're getting rid of those, and also you'll be seeing just a minute there as Team Infinite is getting Gerdo down low enough. He will eventually transition, try to pick up his vial of Infinite Night, and then because that's the only real buff that we're going to be able to have throughout this instance, that will be poisoned, and it will just end the boss fight there at 25%.
Yep, as soon as he takes down to average that to 24%, he runs off, tries to eat it or drink it, and he just dies instead. As they do have a rogue, obviously you can have alchemy as well. That's what Team Sabotage can manage to use so that they can actually kill it at 25 as well. But even though Infinite is a little bit ahead here, Team Sabotage has a bit more percentage, but Infinite doing the very popular strat as we talked about, or as Slut and Nagura talked about earlier, they have the healer just run off way earlier and just proc this RP that starts right where he is right now, and then he's just gonna go die. Meanwhile, the other team is running around, backtracking, taking some trash now, and this is very important here. They did the boss, but they're still doing the same trash as Sabotage did, but they're doing it in a slightly different order to get that Bloodlust right away.
Well, I like what they're doing there because they're getting the Bloodlust on cooldown, and they have to backtrack anyway, and yeah. I love what they're doing just to be able to make sure that they're saying, hey, we have to go past this way anyway, why don't we just clear all the trash on our return here. Team Sabotage is, of course, taking on the Doc's pull without the healer, because, of course, you're usually just going to have your healer, you're probably going to be healer coming back to them very, very soon. Usually just have the healer run ahead, and through the usual linear route, we'll end up opening up the gates for them, and then when he dies, he goes back to the checkpoint there with the gates now open for the for the second checkpoint that you're going to be back to. So now Kagu is rejoining the group as the rest of Team Sabotage is just mopping up the remains of the docks here.
Yeah, this is very interesting to see as well. Both team, or they going back to the docks, as they were already backtracking anyway. And Infinite doing a pretty big pull here. Very risky though. They have 3 people at sub 10%. Gotta get Naga up as well. And there we go. He gets healthy as well. We saw this earlier as well. They don't really bother too much about avoiding the big AoE that leaves a debuff on you. It is not a fortified setting, which means it's not gonna hurt that much. But it's a 22, so it's important to respect that.
Well, it's absolutely terrifying though when they're having to deal with the double Inquisitors. So double Inquisitors were just hitting everybody in the group with their eye spam. So when you were not having, for example, the grips, the interrupts on the eye storms or whatever, and you're letting like the searing glares, for example, just going through, when you're having to deal with both the eye storms going out from the Inquisitors and, of course, the Fell explosions coming out from the Enforcers, that was going to be one of the most terrifying things. So really good lockdown there by Team Infinite, making sure that they're able to deal with the Inquisitors easily. But also they're having, even more big pulls there, taking on another Inquisitor along with a couple extra trash packs here as they engage with the first mini-boss, Amakatya.
Yeah, this is a little bit the only place that's a little bit RNG, where we're having the Enforcers spawn at slightly different places, because kind of what you want to do is when you deal with that first mini-boss, then you might as well pull another Enforcer and try to trickle them down at the same time as to do effective damage and effective cleave instead of just single target or just AoE.
That's right, and one of the nice things is if you're able to kind of get into that position, but you also want to make sure for example, when and where the Enforcers are going to be spawning from, because you don't want to be engaging with a boss or even having as big of a pull as Team Infinite was having, and then having the Enforcer spawn right on top of you and you having to deal with everything, because as it's been right now, they're not line of sighting, they're not even in a position that they'd be able to line of sight very easily. early, so it could cause a lot more problems. So erring on that side of caution, being able to just go to the other side here to deal with the next Enforcer, the impacts. Team Infinite here has just been having a very strong performance so far.
Yeah, and Team Sabotage on their first boss, they're pulling some other small packs as well. They usually go a dog and a succubus to deal with as well. They're not really that menacing, especially not in a non-fortified setting. But teaming, as you said, they make some of these pulls a little bit rougher. The double Inquisition pack is really the big one, as there's another pack with double constructs, but you generally just skip those with or without teaming, so it doesn't make too big of a difference. It's a very boss-centered instance, so teaming is kind of passive.
Yeah, I love seeing that Aura Mastery there going out by Tazaran for Team Infinite there. Making sure that you're staying and you're airing, like I said, on that side of caution as you're having all the Fel explosives going out, because they were in that same position again, where they're in the open field, they're not able to have the line of sight, they're dealing with a full health Inquisitor, and that's one of the things you want to see, especially as a healer. Knowing when you can play more safely and play more aggressively is so important as you're pushing these keys and as you're trying to be able to complete in as quick a time as possible. Because, of course, you want to be able to push out as much as you can, but you also want to make sure that when you're doing so, you're making sure nobody else is going to be dying in the process there. So, it really paying off as you're seeing Tazaran kind of taking a step back on some of the larger pulls and just sitting there, getting out of melee, spamming heals. And then when he's able to be more aggressive as you're pulling into, like, Dalegar, for example, which is a lot easier of a boss to deal with, then he's neck deep in melee and just pumping out big damage.
Yeah, it really only does one bad thing, which is a channel on a person. That's a lot of damage on one person, but these might be mini-bosses from the boss, but they actually apply by fortified settings, as in they are not actually bosses. So they might be mini-bosses, but they have all the benefits as normal.
And of course the extra health that does make them take quite a bit longer to deal with there. So even when you're in that position where you're saying, oh, okay, Quarter Stars has a lot of single target focus to it, but you're able to get these mobs down so much more quickly because, like you said, they don't really have that extra trash percentage there. And Team Infinite, perfect trash percentages. They're going to be dealing with this last Enforcer there, and they should just be able to get to that last mini-boss, and they'll be all set up for Lady Flame Wreath.
Yeah, seeing them all actually trying to dodge, but the Demon Hunter not really making it around fast enough. There we go, everyone dodging again.
Yeah,
they might not need it, but it's a little bit of healer mana that they're saving up as well, and it's like, if they do, will they need that or won't they? So it's a little bit safe. They have a lot of melee though, so it's quite a fair amount of DPS they're losing by having everyone hide.
True, but it's also the gamble of saying that, they believe their healer being able to add some extra damage is going to be more worthwhile than him spending the time healing everybody else. So as you're seeing, as we talked about with positioning, making sure you're going to be out of the way of any Enforcers spawning or anything like that, as they're dealing with the last mini-boss here, Yazarus, it makes it a lot easier just to be able to make sure you're out of the way of any of the patrols, any of the Enforcer spawns, things like that. And one of the biggest ways we saw, especially with China, where they were having, the wipes or just the poor performance on some Quarter Stars, was them just pulling extra mobs or them, not being prepared for certain things in this. And, as everyone is just kind of traveling around the court, getting tucked away into these corners can be so important to making sure you're getting this done cleanly. Yeah,
Infinite coming, as I said, just killing the last mini-boss there. They're going to come up to the last boss the second boss as well, with a little bit over 1 minute on Bloodlust, so I would assume that they would not use it here, even if they did a faster patrol or path where they managed to kill the first boss, or it started early and then get the Bloodlust off early. But I'm assuming they're going to save for the last boss when you have all cooldowns, because right now they probably used all of their cooldowns. At least the Monk did, it looks like, and there comes the Rogue as well.
That's right, and you've seen Team Sabotage is actually having quite a large pull, pulling the Enforcer or pulling one of the Enforcers, Inquisitors, and of course the mini-boss that they're having to deal with here. So it's going to be really odd positioning that they have to actually worry about, as Team Infinite is already doing work here on Lady Flame Wreath. So they're having to make sure they're getting everybody dodging as many of course, the Enforcer spawns as possible. They are having the Ice Storm that was just interrupted, but you are seeing, for example, Dala going down, and because they're engaging with the mini-boss, they're not able to actually release and run back, because even though they're standing right next to the respawn location, they're not able to do it because they're in that kind of sort of pseudo mini-boss fight. So Battle Res then going after Team Sabotage. It looks like they just were not expecting to deal with the Enforcer, as you're seeing another death going down, and they're having to deal with the Construct here. Looks like it just might end up being a wipe for them. They're just trying to get whatever they... Yeah, it looks like there's just going to be a full wipe for Team Sabotage, and this is what we're talking about. When you're having mob spawns that you're not prepared for, when you're not positioning yourself as Team Infinite did in those kind of corners, into those pockets away from everything else, you really can just get burned by it.
Yeah, pulling an Enforcer that spawns right where you are, because they had that one while they were also dealing with the mini-bosses. didn't seem like it was planned. They still needed a few percentages, so the Enforcer does give percent, so they could have done that, but they pulled a bunch of other trash as well, and they're still dealing with the mini-boss again around here again for Team Sabotage, while Infinite basically killing the boss now.
And this is the execution you really want to see out of Team Infinite. When they made that volcanic pick as as their third affix combination, they said, hey, we can just do this more cleanly than you guys can. We know this instance so well in and out, and it's really showing as they're taking down Lady Flame Wreath. Of course, they were holding on to Bloodlust here. You're kind of seeing, the DPSers kind of leapfrogging over each other as they're rotating through cooldowns, rotating through resources of who could most easily take down those extra impacts. And that's what you really want to see, is not kind of overkilling any of them, but knowing, the resources that you have versus everybody else to make things much easier to get all the impacts down very consistently as we're going into the full screen on the investigation.
And Infinite already, they're ahead quite a bit as well. Team Sabotage hasn't pulled the second boss yet, and Infinite also has that Demon Hunter, which is a huge advantage here. Depends on how good you are at managing to spot differences between these.
Oh, let me tell you, I'm Ace Detective, Automatic Jack over here for you. Every time. No Demon Hunter required. But, like you said, it makes it so much easier when you just get everybody spread out, find all the clues all at once, and the Demon Hunter, like you said, a stable spectral sight, find, who the extra demon is, who that Dreadlord is. You think you just look at Jaina and you see, oh, okay, there's the Dreadlord. But it's just a noble from the Nightborn party here, as they are going to be taking it down and then being able to get the key to open up the final boss.
Yeah, the mini boss right before here, and they have the Bloodlust. They made sure that they have that for the last boss, as it's gonna probably be the most annoying one. Flame Wraith isn't by any means easy or just a pushover, but Melandris is just the kind of boss a lot can go wrong pretty quickly on as well, so I'm really interested in seeing as well, are we going to see from Infinite that really, really nice stacking of the boss between the Blade Rushes, because I really like seeing that, and they do only have one range, so they can do that very well as well if he's the one that baits it in the exact same position every time.
I hope you're not saying that the Paladin is ranged. I don't want to stand out there, but you're right, it probably will be the right play for them, just to make sure that the Paladin is going to be standing out, that way he'll be able to bait, because it does cause a lot more inconvenience for your 3 melee composition when you're having to have everybody moving out every single time. You're having the Blade Rushes going all over the entire room. It's such a large inconvenience for them, and that's one of the things as a healer, when you're able to kind of sacrifice a lot of times your own time, your own DPS, hopefully not too much in the way of HPS, right? But you're sacrificing some of your own time to be able to make sure that the DPS is having the easiest time possible. That stuff really ends up paying off in terms of less deaths, higher damage from all those players, and they're able to just focus solely on the rotation and on rotating their defensives, of course, for those slicing maelstroms.
Yeah, and Infinite just about to pull it here, literally right as we say that. Paladin going all out as well, going to be doing a lot of damage here. It's very
on the pull.
It's very interesting. You can see this amount of damage as well, and the Demon Hunter is trying to keep up. Well, he's technically ahead of the Holy Paladin, but they're going to start running out soon of cooldowns, and then it's going to be a little bit less.
I love the presence of mind by Tazner in there, actually bopping Naga as he's doing his death from above, because he knew that the blade dash by Advisor Melandris was going to go right on top of him at the exact same time, so he gets the bop off, so that even when he does end up having his DFA going onto the boss, he's not going to get injured or have the bleed onto him or anything like that. So that was an excellent play there. But you are seeing, of course, Tazren, they are opting to kind of rotate all together as a group. I was expecting it for the pull, but once, of course, the CDs actually ended up falling off for the Paladin, I was thinking that he would end up baiting it quite a bit more. But you are just seeing him contributing as much damage as possible. You are seeing the Skyborn death from above spawning Blade dash going there. That's cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting as well, because every time he charges to these places, he puts that copy down, and when he does the slicing maelstrom, he does AoE damage on everyone in the room, but he also does extra damage if you're close by, and these copies does the same. That's why it's important to spread out or keep moving around as they do here. You can do the stacking period, as they don't actually do anything when they're not doing the slicing maelstrom. You see there the piercing, which does something, but it just kind of have to move out a little bit. If you have them stacked in perfectly, they also just do them in the perfect line, so it's generally a little bit easier, but they're opting to make sure that the Paladin is in melee at all times, make sure that he does that extra damage. They are already a lot ahead, but if he doesn't need to do healing, why not do damage?
That's right. And one of the nicest things you're seeing is you're actually, a couple times you'll see Rentari, for example, jump into those tornadoes before the Slicing Maelstroms. So, of course, you'll have the Blade Surge, and then he'll have the Slicing Maelstrom that'll follow up with it. So you see, the Quick Dispel going off. That way the Paladin's able to proc his Sephuz. You're seeing Aura Mastery going up there. But when you're having that extra Sephuz proc, it makes it so much easier to be able to get people topped off for these. So you're having, for example, the Dispel going out with a Sephuz proc for the Paladin for one Slicing Maelstrom for all the odd Maelstroms, for example, and then you'll have Consumption, the leech, to 20% leech going out into the entire group, going off for the evens, right? And it's a nice rotation, it's a nice consistency factor there as you start having to cycle through different cooldowns, having to cycle through Aura Mastery, through Wings, all that stuff makes it so much easier. So I love the clean play out of Team Infinite here. Only 2 deaths as they're bringing down Advisor Melandris and taking it 2-1.
It began in a full screen and it ended in a full screen. Team